If you will consent to burden your soul with a vow that you should never make and a knowledge you should never dream about, I will promise you in return...
You will promise me in return...
I will promise you a very entertaining evening.
Your offer is far too idiotic to be declined. Permit me here and now to promise as a good comrade and a fellow artist that I will not report any of this, whatever it is, to the police.
He sometimes grows, and so one of the strains that he got recently is called Matanuska Thunderfuck, which is one of the ones that we smoked up there back in the day. So we were laughing about that because it's also such a fucking hilarious name for a weed. But he's like, yeah, I got the seeds, I'm gonna grow it. I'm like, all right, keep growing.
Welcome to Abandoned Albums, the documentary podcast. Each week, your intrepid hosts, Keith R. Higgins and Jeff Calhoun, talk to artists about albums that may have been overlooked or forgotten. Keith and Jeff dig deep into the record crates to unearth the albums you may not even know existed. They also shine a light on and chat with up-and-coming artists whose work we here at Thunderlove Studio have on repeat.
Since we're all strangers to each other, let's get acquainted with a drink, shall we?
When you're on Airport Road, you're almost there. Up where the road divides, you're almost there. On the road will rise along the way, it's not too far to go. You can see the planes take off sometimes, and watch them as they go, and I believe in this. We're almost there. Yes, I believe in this. We're almost there. And when the trains collide across the way, the echoes will spread out, take you away. All you hear the sound most every day, ringing in the ears of the birds that sit on power lines, but soon will disappear, and I believe in this. We're almost there. Yes, I believe in this. We're almost there.
This week is a real treat. An artist that has had a tremendous amount of success. This is an artist that I think a lot of people discover on accident because he's on tour opening for Steve Earle, or he's on tour opening for Sunvolt. But from a singer-songwriter perspective, he's one of the voices that I would listen to sing the phone book. I just want to hear the guy sing. Early in his career, he had a rock band called Varnaline, and big fan, thought they were a terrific rock group. And at some point, that group had some personnel issues where somebody got sick and somebody had children and kind of turned into an adult. Ugh.
Life came in.
Life happened. And he started kind of embracing more of a solo act. This is a career worth paying attention to. This guy's music has been consistently magic. I can't say enough nice things about him. I've worked with him a little bit in the past, doing some other press, back in my radio days. Always found him to be earnest and genuine and nice. Just a really, really fucking nice guy.
He's had such a storied life, and he's had such the artist journeyman's life.
Yeah, he's had such a remarkable career, very difficult to capture in just 1 hour.
I was so happy to be turned on to this and actually find the right Anders. And I remember I sent you a text. I'm like, this is way in my wheelhouse.
Yeah, and I think that's true for a lot of people. I think it's, if you are a fan of Wilco and Sunvolt and Uncle Tupelo, old 97s. If you're not familiar with this artist, you're selling yourself short. There's a gap in your musical life that we hope to fill. This is deep, penetrating stuff.
This is a great, great conversation. Jeff, lead us into it.
I say this every episode, but it might be my favorite episode of Abandoned Albums. This is our conversation with Anders Parker.
Hello, hello.
Hey.
It's been a long time since I saw you, my friend.
Yeah, it has been a long time. How are you?
I'm really, really well. How about you?
Oh, I'm doing okay. Busy.
Busy is good.
Yeah. Where are you at?
I'm in Birmingham, Alabama.
Oh, you are?
Yeah.
Awesome.
Anders, please meet Keith.
Hey, Keith.
Nice to meet you.
He is up in New Haven, Connecticut.
All right. I grew up outside of Poughkeepsie, New York.
I know. I saw the bio. Hudson Valley, a lovely area. I was just there a couple weeks ago. So.
Oh, yeah? What were you doing?
We went to go see Robert Plant and Alison Krauss at the Bethel Center.
Oh, cool. Awesome.
Yeah, it was a great job.
Anders, you are fresh off of a series of tour dates with a man that many would consider a legend, Steve Earle, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Pretty cool to see Copperhead Road every night.
Yeah, he played Copperhead Road every night, and Steve put up one of my records, the last Varnaline record, on his E Squared label. So and I met him a bunch of years before that, and he was always very supportive and put out that record, and we kind of stayed in casual contact over the years. I hung out with him a few times in New York, and he's just a really great dude. And I sent him an advance copy of the record, and he was very gracious and complimentary about it. And then a few months later, I got a call from his booking agent, asked me if I would open up some shows. So it was great.
We're catching you in between. You just came off the road with Steve, and you're about to go out with Sunvolt, if I'm reading the tour dates correctly.
Yep, that's correct. I pick up with them in the second half of August.
Well, let's rewind the last time you and I saw one another, Anders, which was before your solo career had even started. I was a plucky college radio DJ, pushing Varnaline, and I think Varnaline was probably at that point starting to wind down, and you were making a transition away from that band into being a solo artist.
Well, a couple things happened. Judd, the drummer, was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis during the making. Actually, it kind of hit. He didn't know what it was. We didn't know what it was for a while afterwards, but it kind of started the last day of tracking of the album Sweet Life. And then my brother had a kid, and so those guys kind of, just kind of life took over, and then I started making solo records then, and that was like early 2000s. I think 2000. Yeah, that's right, because Songs in the Northern Key came out right before September 11th, 2001.
Keith, I don't want to bogart this conversation, man. I know I'm capable of it, so I'm going to.
You know what I want to ask you about is you have lived in a myriad of different places.
Yes.
I'd like to understand how that affects or impacts your creative process.
I've wondered about that myself. I think a move always jogs something, but I wouldn't say that was the at least the conscious reason for all the moving around. And I don't necessarily anticipate that, or it's not part of my plan. You know what I'm saying?
Sure.
I think it's just a byproduct of kind of being restless and wanting to live in a bunch of different places and liking a bunch of different places. And, there's so many places that I have yet to see, and so many places like, I go to Tucson. I'm like, this is a great place. What's it like to live here? And I've done that a bunch over the course of my life. But that's a long-winded way of saying I don't know.
No, it's great. Which begs the question, how did you end up 500 miles from the North Pole? And tell us about that experience. And
Well, that's a little bit convoluted and confusing because I lived in Alaska, but I lived on the Kenai Peninsula and worked fishing up there. So that was my thing. I was also playing. A bunch of friends and I drove from New York State to Alaska to Canada. Our van blew up, and I ended up hitchhiking 600 miles to go meet a friend who was on a boat that we were supposed to meet, but this was pre internet and pre ubiquitous cell phone, so we had to get there to meet this guy, and then hitchhike a bunch more, and then we also played. We bought all of our band equipment, so we played in canneries and bars and on the docks and campgrounds, kind of all over the place, wherever they would have us at the time.
Fuck, that's kind of incredible, dude.
It was definitely a wild and hilarious adventure. We definitely. I remember driving I think we were driving out of Anchorage, and we were driving up these mountains, and the van got fixed, but it didn't really get fixed. So it was only operating on, I think, like 6 of the 8 cylinders. So we would slide open the door, and a bunch of us would jump out and push the van, over the crest of the hill, and then jump back into the van. It was ridiculous. But lots of fun, and it's beautiful up there too. I love it up there.
That's fantastic. Yeah, moving around can be quite inspirational.
Yeah, and it's I kind of wanted to leave where I grew up as soon as I kind of could, even though I love the area, and I came back a lot. But there's so many things to see and experience in the world,
A mileage test that began more than 3 miles back. Each of those 10 cars started with exactly the same volume of gasoline. The engines are as identical as engines can be. The cars started together, accelerated to 50, and have held that speed ever since.
Varnaline, as the front half of your career, Keith and I have had a number of artists on that had records published in that 1996, 97, 98, 99 era, when I think the theme for a lot of us is we didn't know that we were witnessing the death of the traditional record label, but we were absolutely witnessing the death of the traditional record label. And from my perspective, you were one of the early artists to kind of recognize, I think I can do a lot of this on my own and start taking on a little bit more internally than what the record label might suggest is the traditional way of doing it.
Yeah, I remember, so much was happening then, like the early 90s after Nirvana hit, and the kind of the feeding frenzy that became, the big labels looking to pick up small bands, indie rock bands, and turn them into big acts. There was so many bands got sucked up into that machine, and a lot of them got eaten. A lot of them, some of them did okay. I think I was maybe a little bit too overly concerned about being swallowed up even at that point. So I turned down some large deals at the time, which who knows, good or bad. But I think to me, the thing was like Guided by Voices, B1000 came out. I forget what year that was. And then Sebadoh was out as well. And I actually played a few shows with Sebadoh and got to talk to, I talked to Lou about it, and I was like, it wasn't so much the music. I liked the music, but I was never like a huge fan. But to me, it was the fact that you could make your music the way you wanted to do, and you didn't really have to wait for anybody to kind of give you permission. So that's, I made my first record on 4-track because that was the way I could do it. I had made records in studios before. I made recordings in studios and never really kind of liked the final product because I was learning how the whole thing went and didn't really have, a producer or a person that I was working with that I felt confident about or with. But to me, it was just at a certain point, writing songs and making recordings, and that was what it was. And of course, I've kind of bounced back and forth between all that, from spending large amounts of money to make a record to spending nothing or doing it myself or doing a part of it myself, back and forth. But I think, controlling the means of production and being able to do the things I want was the most important thing, and I always kind of took the long view of what being an artist was or being a creative person was. And I think, my dad was, he was an engineer. He worked for IBM, but he grew up on a farm, and there was very much that ethic of like, if you want to do something, you do it yourself, and you figure it out. You figure out a way to do it. You talk to people. That was how I went about it and still do, it's basically like a small, it's a small business / art project my entire life.
Yeah. For sure.
For better, for worse. So
for better, trust us. For better.
For better for us anyway. Can't speak to your side of it.
Yeah.
Before I close the books on Varnaline and start to focus exclusively on your individual solo records, I think the nice sort of period on the story as we talk about your experience in Alaska, I can't ever talk about Varnaline and not bring up the song Northern Lights. I think as college kids, we all listened to it and thought, oh, it's a great marijuana strain. and then you listen for that in the song. You're like, no, I think he's actually talking about like the real Aurora Borealis here.
That's so funny. One of my buddies, who actually is not a musician, but one of the guys actually the guy that I hitchhiked all those miles to go meet in Skagway, Alaska, is a lifelong aficionado of the mother weed, and he sometimes grows, and so one of the strains that he got recently is called Matanuska Thunderfuck, which is one of the ones that we smoked up there back in the day. So we were laughing about that because it's also such a fucking hilarious name for a weed. But he's like, yeah, I got the seeds, I'm gonna grow it. I'm like, all right, I can't wait to try it. But no, that was maybe one of our last nights in Alaska, and we were kind of just I'm sure we were definitely high, but it was the song's primarily about being kind of Stuck Without a Place and The Lights Coming Out, which was pretty tremendous.
I bet, man. It's a gorgeous song. Flipping the page to your solo stuff, The Wounded Astronaut is a song that I found to be very Varnaline adjacent. It was a carry through, I thought. It's another song that over the years I've put on a lot of mixtapes for girls that I liked. It's a really, really beautiful song, and I'm not going to lie, gets me a little bit emotional. Can you take me back to The Wounded Astronaut?
Well, let me think. Well, I guess I will say, like, for me, it's hard to delineate what is Varnaline and what is me. You know what I'm saying? Because I wouldn't say that there's probably things that I've done in my solo career that I wouldn't have done if the band was still a band. But like half those Varnaline records were just me anyway.
Right.
Like I had the concept and the name for a band before I had an actual band. So, but that tune. Actually, a friend of mine when I was living in North Carolina in Raleigh, I can't remember exactly what was going on, but there was I had some exchange with a friend of mine, and he said something to the effect of, "Oh, the girls all love a wounded astronaut," and I think that maybe I had been going through some things at the time, and he was trying to either cheer me up or make an observation of what was going on in my life. But that line just kind of resonated with me,
Where the wounded astronauts came down onto the earth and kissed a bit of dirt, and everyone loves to say it'll be different in a day. That you may dry land. As I used to do, I always used to carry a piece of folded Xerox paper or white sheet paper and a pen in my pocket, and I would always write stuff down. Now I do it on my phone, like everybody else, but so I wrote that down. And then the music, that's another thing. Now I think of it. I had all the pieces of that song, but then I had a couple guys I was playing with kind of regularly there. My buddy Jim Vincent, who played drums, and my buddy Bo Taylor, amazing guitar player, bass player. Anyway, we used to kind of just to get together and play, and I would bring songs like a bunch of the Tell It to the Dust and Wounded Astronaut songs all came out of that era. And I brought it to those guys, and Bo kind of helped me. He kind of made a few suggestions about switching stuff around. He basically kind of rearranged certain parts with me. So that's how that song came about. But I can't really remember specifically. I'd have to look at the lyrics to actually remember if there's anything beyond that. But I definitely remember my buddy saying that
me writing it down and it resonating.
It's funny how that works. You just hear a catchphrase somewhere, and it's just like, I got to write that down. I know.
Yeah.
That's got to be a piece of dialogue, or that's got to be something.
Totally. I do that. I still do that all the time. I have a note thing in my phone, and I'm always, if I hear something on the radio or somebody says something or something pops into my head, because I have such a bad memory, I have to write shit down or I'll forget it. So
I agree 100%. I have a notepad and a pen, old school, right next to my bed.
Yeah.
Just in case.
Just got to capture it while you can. So
you've been very fortunate to be involved with some very cool collaborations over the course of your career.
For sure.
I wonder if you can take us into that Woody Guthrie record where you and Jay and Will Johnson, I mean, it's an incredible assembly of talent, and the elevation of the songs I thought was tremendous. What was that experience like?
Well, there's a lot of things there. I think to me, ultimately, it just speaks to the quality of Woody Guthrie's writing, that all those lyrics, I remember talking to Jay about this, just like how fast things came, like I got a few sheets of copies of his writings, and they just kind of tumbled out. And I wrote more, Jay and I had started the project together, did a whole album plus of material, and then Jim James and Will Johnson got involved kind of halfway through the whole thing, and then they wrote a bunch of music for songs. So, but to me that's like the kind of magic nugget of it is Woody's creations, and then also all those other three guys are amazing, so they each brought really great melodies and musical ideas, and it was like super. It was just a super fun thing, and it wasn't belabored. Like everything happened quickly. So that's a very fond memory, and I haven't listened to it in a long time, but I still play a couple of those songs, and it's definitely a special thing to have been involved with, for sure. Just to be a fan of American music, to be in any way connected to that lineage is really, really exciting and an awesome opportunity. And to have, actually been at the offices where, Nora was, and be going through the actual real things, like putting on our white gloves and turning pages to his notebooks or sheaves of things he doodled on and what have you. So that, if it had ended there, I would have been excited and it would have been a memorable experience. But that was something else.
I'm going to do a visual now. I apologize for the listeners out there, but I'm just going to tilt the camera a little bit. This is a guitar. I don't play guitar, by the way, but this is the guitar I found on the street. Let's see if we can get it. Oh, I got to bring it up.
All right. You've got two guitars for somebody who doesn't play guitar.
One's a Paul Westerberg, and I picked this on the street because it said "This machine kills fascists."
Oh, that was on there?
Yep.
Oh,
I didn't put it there. That's the only reason I picked this up. I'm like, oh fuck, I got to get that.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And also free guitar.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I'm flying on this plane back into your arms again, and my eyes are sad and cloudy. My teardrops fall like rain as I look down past my wing, flying home to you again. In the clouds I see your picture while the engine sings your name. I'm flying high up in the sky, but my heart keeps looking for you all around, down on the ground. On every
Explain to our listeners what gob iron is.
Please.
Well, gob iron, unbeknownst to me until I went to England and played some shows there, and the guy who was kind of my liaison tour manager, kind of helping me get around, I think I must have been playing harmonica. I don't know how it would have come up, but he said, "Oh, you got your gob iron." So it's apparently, he said, it's British slang for harmonica. You know, I believe him, you know.
Yeah.
I don't know if I've heard it before or since then, but so anyway, and then Jay and I got to recording those songs, which became that record. And I think that I mentioned it because we were kind of casting about like how we're gonna name this. Are we gonna use our last names or whatever? So he was like, "Oh, that sounds good." And I was like, "All right, there you go."
It's a lot of instrumental stuff on that record that was really cool.
Yeah, we did a bunch of songs. That was a totally impromptu thing, to be perfectly honest. That was not planned. It was just kind of like we had originally were going to do something else, and then he was kind of like, let's record some folk songs. So I think I had brought a CD of the Stanley Brothers' first recordings, and so a few of those songs are off of there. One of the songs was from the I kind of stole or copped from. I had a bootleg of all the original Basement tape recordings before that was released. You know, it was released a couple of years ago, but I had like 5 CDs that I paid an exorbitant amount of money for from a record store in Colorado somewhere. So anyway, we did a bunch of those songs, and then we just it was just the two of us. We didn't have an engineer or anything. We would just roll the tape and just kind of jam, as it were, you know, 2 acoustic guitars. And then we ended up kind of taking the best bits of that and using them as segues between a bunch of the songs.
It made a really interesting listen.
Yeah, well, that's polite.
No, in a good way. I mean, it's
I know.
It keeps your ear anticipating what's going to come next.
Yeah. Again, I haven't listened to that record probably since we made it. You know, so it's hard for me to remember exactly what all is on there. But it. You know, like anything you do, like any record that I've made, you're so in it when you make it, and then you leave it, you know, and it's
right.
It's you know, you think back to like all the little micro decisions you were making and how important everything seemed, and the fade here, and you know, this one note, whatever. But I will say that wasn't that labored over, and it was kind of a fun thing we did, and it all just kind of happened naturally, you know.
That's the best way things happen, naturally.
Yeah, I mean, you can force things or you can have elaborate plans, but there's something to be said for just letting things happen as they are, and not trying to make them perfect. You know, I think trying with, you know, especially with this last thing that I did, where I just recorded it all in one day. I just wanted it to be what it was for that day. You know, I mean, I worked on it and I practiced and I but I also left a lot of it kind of up in the air and what was going on that day. And I didn't want it to be, perfect. Especially these days, you can get in there and change every note and change every little micro thing and move it around. And it's a slippery slope when to stop doing those things. So I've always tried to treat the recording process kind of like an analog process, even when it is digital, not do, get a performance, I guess, is ultimately what I'm trying to do.
Yeah. A friend of mine said this to me, and she was quite astute. I was working on something, and she goes, "You got to be careful. You're going to work yourself into paralysis."
Yeah.
Because what happens is you just keep going back at it.
Yeah.
Fine tuning until it's like, I lost whatever sensitivity or emotion or that. For me, that pursuit of perfection, it's a goal, but I know intellectually it's never achievable.
I think your friend is correct in that you can squeeze the life out of something by working it over and over. I mean, there are exceptions. There are exceptions to every rule, and ultimately, it doesn't really make a difference how people make music or art. It's the end result is what's important. But for instance, I was listening. I guess I was on tour. Maybe this when I was just out with Steve, and I watched. Is it Noel Gallagher? He's the guitar player. Yeah. So he was on one of those Gearhead shows. I think it was a pedal show, and I've never been a huge
Oasis fan.
Oasis fan.
Yeah.
Of course, aware of them, and I know they're huge, and but I've always found him entertaining. The brothers; those guys are fucking hilarious. I find, yeah. But anyway, I watched this thing, and it was quite enjoyable. And he was he had definitely had. It was cool the way he had a vision early on about how he wanted to approach things. But when he was talking about his process for recording, basically they did everything in layers. He would go in and record an acoustic guitar to a click track, and then they would come back and he would do a scratch vocal, and then they would build from there. And I was like, a light went off my head. I was like, that's why I don't like them or don't feel necessarily connected, because, and then I went back and listened to the first couple of records, and there actually are some good songs in there, even though it's not really my thing. Everything seems so reined into me, it's even though it's a rock band and the loud guitars and what have you, it just feels like there's no kind of there's no speeding up, slowing down, which to me is such a thing about any kind of music. It's there's dynamics, but I think tempo dynamics to me are as important as anything else. But there's again, when I listened to it, I was like, that's kind of what I realized why I wasn't really relating to it so much, is that it just seems a little bit conservative ultimately to me. And there are bands, I love electronic music. That's, I love Kraftwerk, but in some ways Kraftwerk seems more human to me than Oasis does. If that makes sense. There's something a little bit more, there's a little bit more humanity in there, oddly enough to me,
Yeah.
Exactly the word I was going to use.
Yeah.
Jeff and I have talked about this before. I think you're right. Oasis for me never resonated. I think it sounds good, but it seems so orchestrated.
Yeah.
When you think about go back to the 70s, Clapton, and even one of my favorite songs by Cat Stevens is Bitter Blue. And if you listen to it, there's a bum note right up top.
Yeah.
He hit a bum chord, and they left it in, and it's that adds. I just got goosebumps. It adds to it.
Yeah.
I don't want perfection. I want feeling.
For sure. If you listen to the Beatles records, you can hear you can hear the background vocals where there's if they stacked them, you can hear the kind of the rubbing of somebody's a little flat and somebody maybe a little sharp or whatever. And that stuff, you don't really think about it until you start listening to stuff over and over again. And then you hear it, or your ear gets better, or you become older and more attuned to what people are doing. When I was a kid, you just accept it for what it is, listening to the Beatles. It's this magical music, that these guys made. And it still is this magical music, but then you realize all those little mistakes or little derivations or little things that they did because they were, guys working on tape, is where a lot of the magic lies,
For sure.
Not that people people overcooked stuff on analog too, the hilarious stories of people recording the Eagles or whatever, where they would just beat it to death, but still great.
Have you reached a point, you could potentially be lumped into several genres. Let's name a couple: Americana, singer-songwriter, alt country. Have you reached a point in your career where the notion of genre is almost silly?
I reached that probably around when I released my first record. I guess I probably most relate to singer-songwriter of those three. I never really felt. I mean, I guess I've never really felt part of any kind of genre or subgenre in a weird way, I guess because of some of the company that I keep, the roots rock or Americana thing has kind of been a thing, but I don't know if I really relate to that. I kind of feel more like, I don't know. I guess it's something that I don't think about, really. And it's more kind of a vexing thing to me than anything else. But at a certain point, I think I just don't worry about that stuff. What I've done recently is the last run I've tried to come up with a succinct answer for folks when they ask me what kind of music I make. And I've distilled it down to, folk, rock, blues, and noise is what I do. And I kind of feel like that kind of covers a lot of ground. It's vague enough, but it kind of, it also kind of gives somewhat of a scope of what the things that I've done, I feel more inspired by the British folk guys of the 60s than I do probably by any Americana bands of the past 30 years, or the, folk blues stuff from the dawn of recording, or, I definitely think more about Pete Townsend than I think about Hank Williams, for sure, not that, and that has, I'm not putting down anything, and I don't really, to me, music is an endless source of fascination, and there's so many things that I listen to. So, but definitely, Tommy's more important to me than, probably the most of the canon of country music, even though I love country music, a lot of it, early stuff. And I don't know what genre I am, basically, is how I would say it,
I don't think you need one.
Yeah.
If I may, I was listening to Northern Girl earlier, and what I heard was shades of Greg Brown.
Spell on me, would not let me be, staying up all night. So if you see her by the riverside, remind her of I used to be. Not so long ago we used to dream, we used to live to breathe. travel in the distance of her memory. She was my northern girl, and I her northern boy. Remember those days.
I think Greg Brown sort of fell into that same sort of category. He got lumped into folk, but when I listen to Greg Brown, I don't really think of folk so much. I think of somebody who's literary. I think of somebody who's there. Is there rock elements to it? Not in the same way that you and the three of us might discuss rock, but I think so.
Yeah.
You know,
like that song is a direct. I stole that more or less. It's you wouldn't know it because it's redone, but you know that's stolen from Bert Jansch, basically. You know he was in Pentangle as well, but one of the early English folk fingerstyle guitar players. He's like I think Neil Young called him the Jimi Hendrix of acoustic guitar, which would be totally accurate. He's maybe more famously known because Jimmy Page also stole from him more blatantly than I did, and people would people call him on that. But yeah, I mean, to me, it's fascinating that I can do something that at first when I do it, I'm like, oh, that's a total ripoff, you know. But then I realize I get a little distance from it. I realize that nobody's going to fucking know because it is really different. It's not the same, but it's inspired by. Mm-hmm. And then somebody will come along and say something totally, you know, I know who Greg Brown is, but honestly, I don't know his music that well. So
Sure.
That's, to me, it's like, you know, again, it's the whole fascinating thing about music to me is that every day I discover stuff. I still buy records all the time, and I'm still searching for stuff because I want to, you know, it's enjoyable to me, you know? So like you say that and it's cool. Like, wow, maybe I should check him out, you know, like go down that avenue and see what it's all about, you know?
I think you might like it. I like it. Yeah.
I'm going to have a Barbie moment.
A what?
A Barbie moment.
I don't know what that is.
Well, you know, the movie's out, right? And everybody's upset about definitions of gender stereotype and roles. I'm not afraid to tell you, I will allow music to move me to tears at times.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
And so genre-wise, I think you're capable of hopping. You might have one record that I would label alt country and another that's a rock record and a psych record. You know, you can bounce around genres. One thing that is universally consistent throughout all your music is an emotional honesty and an ability to tap into something that I'll name a couple songs. Keep Me Hanging On is a song that, like, it's a heavy one. So It Goes, I think, is a pretty heavy song. As the Stars Fell Down on Me, I think, is a pretty heavy song. You're real honest about emotion. And those are all like heavy, like, you know, maybe lend you into a teary moment. You're also capable of going the opposite direction. I think a song like Don't Let the Darkness In is a depression-proof song. It's really bright and cheery, but emotionally honest.
I don't know how else to do it, if that makes sense. You know, I wish that I could say that I was more calculating or that I had a more of a brill building kind of like, I'm going to write a song about cars today, you know, type of thing, or like that type of thing. I mean, because I admire so much of that. But to me, it's always like there's a little bit of, or there's a lot of actually, I don't really know what's going on kind of, you know, still, I think, and that's why I keep on writing and making music, is because the actual thing of creating it is still a mysterious thing, and I'm not exactly sure what I'm, you know, it's still like fascinating. There's some sort of weird rush and thing that I tap into when I'm doing that still feels like it did when I started making music when I was a kid, you know. So yeah, I don't. It's just again about that whole thing of like just letting stuff happen or making it natural. That's kind of where it comes from, I guess. You know,
it's a great place to come from. I love the idea that you recorded the record in one day and just let the chips fall, if you'll pardon the rhyme, let the chips fall where they may.
Yeah.
I admire that. It's like, I just think it's cool.
Well, thanks. And it took me some, I had to make the recording, and then I had to sit with it for a while, because I always feel like I don't see stuff until I get distance from it,
Oh, yeah.
So I don't think that, I think I actually recorded it. It'll be exactly a year ago in a couple days. And then I think I came back in a month and a half or 2 months later to kind of decide on what the takes were and do a little bit of, we did some mixing, and then I came back in the new year and just changed we put a little bit of reverb and tape echo on a few songs. And so we just changed those things, changed a couple little things, but yeah, that's, so much, of the music that kind of inspired the way that I wanted to make the record, as far as I was thinking about all those early blues sides, the country blues, the folk blues stuff of the Paramount recordings and Robert Johnson and all those guys, that Skip James and Charlie Patton. Basically, they would, somebody would arrange for them to do a recording session. They would show up and play the songs once, maybe twice through. Then all the jazz records of them were made that way, and all the stuff with the dawn of rock and roll that was made that way. It was just trying to get a thing that was happening there in the room. And because I play solo so much, I just wanted to do that, as part of the package of the songs. And I also knew that I was never going to get, especially a few of the longer songs, perfect, but I wanted to get the energy and the power of what was going on there on the recording. So that was the reason that I wanted to do that. And I didn't want to, I kind of wanted to put the pressure on and do it that way. And it's a document. It's what it was at the time. So.
Yeah. Perfect. A snapshot.
Yeah.
Now, for folks listening to the podcast, the new album is due out when?
August 11th.
Northern Girl and Don't You Let Them Get You Down are the two singles that are available now. And they're gorgeous. They're representative, I think, of your catalog, as good as any jumping off point if you're not already hip to the Anders Parker catalog. We hope that you are, but a fine place to start and then explore it all. Man, what a career you've had.
Hopefully it's still going.
Yeah, it's it's wonderful to see artists still producing music that didn't get gobbled up by, because there was a lot of bad experiences in 1999 dealing with frustrations with record labels, and a lot of people hung up their gear.
I guess there's something to be said for making one or two great records, if people make great records and then, hanging it up. But I never looked at it that way, or at least that's not the way that music affected me. It always felt like as soon as I got into it, it still feels like all consuming. I remember being in third grade and my teacher basically just calling me out saying, "You're such a daydreamer," and for better or for worse, that's kind of what I've been, I think about music and art. I've been painting a lot recently, making paintings, and I think about that stuff all the time. And I wish that I could control myself sometimes to focus on more practical of the day-to-day practicalities of life, but I'm seemingly I find that difficult to do. But I think, as I was saying, music still fascinates me, and I still feel like I have a long list of ideas and things that I want to do musically as well as artistically. So I just keep on doing it.
I said this to Jeff the other day in a text. I said, work is the curse of the creative class.
Yeah. It really is.
It's awful.
Yeah. I mean, it's like, especially because being creative is work, it's like inspiration is one thing, but you have to do the work, whether, like you're basically running a small business and you actually have to, as part of the creative process, you have to finish whatever you're doing. It's one thing to have an idea and to, maybe write a song or whatever, but to actually bring it to fruition and do all the stuff from the very important finishing the song, but then deciding how you're going to record it and financing how you're going to record it and how you're going to release it and how does this thing come out and how do you do the practicalities of the finances and going back to Pete Townsend, I remember reading an article with him years and years ago. I believe he went to art school, but the interviewer asked him if he wished he had gone to music school, and his reply was, "No, I wish I went to business school." And at the time, I was like, "Oh, that's interesting." I didn't really get it, but now I totally get it. It's now it's not lost on me. That, along with Steve Earle saying to me ages ago, "There's no middle class in rock and roll," and me being like, "What? I kind of unprompted, But now I realize, like, oh yeah, there is no middle class in rock and roll. It's either you're obscenely doing well or you're just scrimping to get by.
Well, to quote Jeff from the other day, our last interview, he said breaking even is the new. What did you say? Breaking even is the new.
Yeah, breaking even is the new profitable for a band.
Yeah. Oh yeah. That's the truth, man. That's the truth. I mean, I would love to have a band and to be able to take on the road, but for me, it's near impossibility. I had a couple great guys that I was playing with in Vermont when I lived up there. And we would do stuff, on the East Coast, but it was like anytime I got an offer to do something, either touring with somebody or doing one-offs or whatever, by the time you did airfare and car rentals and hotel rooms and stuff like that, it was like, it becomes an expensive hobby.
Yeah,
sure does.
Yeah.
So, but the breaking even is the new profitable is kind of the way life is these days.
Sadly.
Yeah. But I've found ways to make art throughout all of my changes in my life, always, and I guess that gets back to the whole DIY thing. It's if you feel strongly enough about something, you want to do it, then you can do it.
Books, records, films, these things matter. Call me shallow. It's the fucking truth.
If it's in you, you do it.
Yeah, art matters. And I think it's like, there's something about people more eloquent than I have talked a lot about it, but, art is something that touches people and reaches people, and it's a needed and important thing in life, I believe. In this country, it's not necessarily held in high esteem, and but there are people out there who appreciate it, and it's really interesting to find all the little pockets and subcultures and people who are, artistic, I've been really so obsessed with oil painting recently, and just discovering all these artists that, like, well, why haven't I heard of this person before? When you see all these beautiful things, they made a lifetime of art, and it's just somewhere it's there to be found, and it's that's a beautiful thing.
I have a friend of mine who is a plein air artist who, speaking of oil paints, and he packed it all in about, I guess I want to say about 12, 18 months ago. He still has a house that he rents in Savannah, but he's been driving around the country for the past 12 to 18 months just painting. That's
amazing.
It's incredible.
Yeah, that's amazing. Good for him.
Yeah.
Wow.
He enters the plein air contests, and it's fantastic. It's just it's dreamy to fantasize about.
It is enviable.
Yeah, for sure.
Oh man. So I think Keith and I, as a part of our mission statement on the show, we try to lift up music that we feel like maybe people aren't celebrating widely enough for our liking.
Yeah.
Our arbiters of taste that we are.
Hey man, that's brilliant and beautiful. I love it.
It is just a gas for you to join us, man. I'm so happy that there's more music coming. You're part of my soundtrack and continue to be, and I'm just so grateful for your place in music, man.
Well, thank you so much. And I should say how just sweet and genuine you guys, you and your crew of dudes back in the day were. Every time we came through, you were so it was just always a fun hang and memorable experience. And I actually have that recording somewhere of the time we played on air.
I tell you what, man, of all the bands we ever had perform live on the air, Anders might be the only one I ever reached back to and said, we should put this out. The performance is just amazing.
I have all these recordings from back then, and I actually went as far as to make like a live, kind of a bootleg compilation of live tracks for Varnaline. That is just sitting. I'm really bad about going back. I go back and then I'm like, it just makes me want to move forward in a weird way. But that's sometime that'll see light of day. But yeah, anyway, it was much appreciated, and I've seen a few of the other guys here and there over the years have popped up random places. But
yeah, there was a lot of love for Varnaline in Tuscaloosa, Alabama, circa 1998.
Yeah, for sure.
Oh man, thank you again, Anders. This is a real joy, a real treat for us.
Oh, thanks, and you guys were great. I really appreciate the questions and your point of view, and really well done. So I look forward to checking out your other episodes.
I hope you do.
Yeah, I will.
All right, cool. Thank you so much.
Thank you guys so much.
See you soon.
Bye-bye.
Take care.
If you are listening to the interview and you think, well, I wish they'd asked this, shoot us an email. We love hearing that kind of stuff.
Many thanks to Anders for stopping by to chat with us. Be sure to check out the show notes section for links to all of Anders' work.
Our theme song is Rocket Sled by Blip. Abandoned Albums was recorded at Thunder Love Studios.
Written and produced by Keith R. Higgins and Jeff Calhoun.
Engineered and mixed by Steve Beasley with the help of Mike Hunt. Edited by AJ Royce.
The songs you heard during tonight's show were Airport Road, Northern Lights, The Wounded Astronaut, Fly High, Instrumental Part 8, and The Northern Girl from the new album The Black Flight. You can stream all of Anders' work wherever you stream your favorite music. Check out the show notes section for links to all of it and his Bandcamp page. Be sure to head over to undertowmusic.com if you're looking to have Anders over for a living room show.
Original music by Mike Pellegrino.
As always, please support independent artists.
If you like what you've heard, please be sure to subscribe and leave us a rating. It really does help. Thanks for listening.
At Twitter, we are at Abandon Albums, and on Instagram, we are at Abandon_albums.
Grazie. Bailey Leaf. Rob Janicki. Mike Pellegrino. Therina Vella. Ronnie Barnett. S.W. Loudon. Michael Janicki. Peyton Janicki. And our executive producer,
Rufus Thunderlove.
Abandoned Albums receives funding from the Vandelay Latex Group. Latex, the way it should be.
And now, until we meet again next time, I remain as always obediently yours.
Abandoned Albums is a production of Paw Print Media.